In terms of what ARB is doing, our statutes, the health and safety code statutes on what we call them as Part 5 mobile sources, the passenger vehicles that we're talking about, are essentially strict liability statutes. They're the 5,000 per violation that I spoke of before. So within that context, ARB itself doesn't necessarily, have the ability in that sector that we do in some other sectors, but not in the passenger vehicle sector, to enforce criminally. That's not to say that others aren't investigating. We know the German investigators are investigating some of the VW folks criminally, and I think today they reported that they expanded their probe from 7 people to 17 or something like that. So, but again, how high up that goes, we don't know, and those are, other agencies outside of California that are looking at that.
Right. So then criminal charges here in this state, of course, would be the purview of the Department of Justice.
Correct.
So, and I have no information as to what the strength of the case that the Department of Justice may have, so I'm not presupposing anything there, but I'm just curious. What's initiating my questioning is, should we be looking at changing statute so that there might be greater penalty provision for our criminal justice arm that may not exist today?
If you're talking about their resources board's health and safety code statutes, of course, you could look at that. You could consider making them more parallel to what I call the parts 1 through 4 violations, where for years we've had a parallel civil and criminal set of statutes. So you can, ARB or the Attorney General representing us can choose which way to go, civilly or criminally. Now, like a lot of areas of law, it's more difficult to prove a criminal violation, but the facts in this case are, potentially there. We just don't know that at this point.
Can you remind us at what level of acknowledgement Volkswagen or its executives have admitted to the crime already?
No, I don't think we can comment on that. I don't really think anyone knows except those who are conducting the investigations.
So that has not been made public?
No, I mean, there have been various denials, I think, by some of the VW executives, just generally.
So there's been no acknowledgement of guilt on anyone's part right now that has been reported publicly?
I don't believe
I'm not looking for confidential information. Okay, thank you.
And again, it depends what level you're talking about. I mean, the company has admitted that there were defeat devices, but no individual has come forward.
Senator Pavley.
And a question for Mr. Corey. I didn't know if it was legally or technologically feasible to give Volkswagen the requirement or mandate that a certain percentage of the vehicle fleet would have to be zero-emission cars in order to quantify the mitigation, to mitigate the emissions. So that we don't continue to wonder if diesel can be clean enough to be used here in California. Can a certain percentage of Volkswagen cars be required to be zero-emission vehicles beginning in such and such a date going forward to mitigate those emissions over time?
So there are lots of potential remedies, both in terms of mitigation and ultimately even in terms of penalties that...
I was thinking of more than penalizing them as dollars and cents, but in addition to making some real change, so if they want to sell their cars moving forward in California, where we're going to want 1.5 million zero-emission vehicles, that may be the best way to mitigate.
That is one option that, that could be considered, and that VW, well, they would have to agree to it, and it would have to be part of a...
Build their electric car
right.
in California. Oh.
Right, and that could be part of something that they agree to and is part of a court-ordered settlement, ultimately.
We have a big enough vehicle market that might be one of the options.
You know, for the camping public, the Westphalia product may be something that we get more people outdoors if we sold more of those. I'm going to thank the Area Resource Board for coming here and for the work that you've done and your continued diligence. I realize that this is just a Kodak moment that we have on this investigation, and thank you for the update. I'll have to excuse you to bring up the next panel. Thank you very much. Never mind. What is this? So now the two committees are going to review the impact of the defeat devices. So we have like to call up Will Barrett, who's the Senior Policy Analyst at the American Lung Association here in California, Emily Roach, who's the Executive Director of CalPERG, and Cliff Costa, who is the Director of Government Affairs for the California New Car Dealers Association. Thank you all for your patience. And if anybody would like to go first? Mr. Barrett?
My name is Will Barrett. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst for the American Lung Association in California. We appreciate the opportunity today to provide our perspective on this important and unsettling chapter in the fight for healthy air. For over 100 years, the Lung Association has worked to save lives by improving lung health and preventing lung disease through research, education, and advocacy. In California, we view this work as especially important as we deal with the nation's most difficult air pollution challenges through highly effective clean air rules and incentive programs. The Lung Association views the cheating scandal as a completely unacceptable assault on public health and on the clean air progress that has been made by the California Air Resources Board and the US EPA in controlling harmful emissions from motor vehicles. Our bottom line view today is that each and every vehicle found to be out of compliance should be removed from the roads. Those that can be brought back into full compliance should be. Those that cannot be should be purchased back by VW and scrapped. Leaving these implicated vehicles on the road any longer is doubling down on this unprecedented assault on lung health, and especially the health of millions of Californians, about 40% of our state, who live nearest to major roadways and face the greatest brunt of our traffic pollution. Any of these vehicles that stay on the road and continue poisoning these communities is unacceptable, and we believe VW is well aware of that fact. The Boston-based Health Effects Institute is an independent research organization that provides high-quality, impartial, and relevant science on the health effects of air pollution. It's jointly funded by the US EPA and many automakers, including Volkswagen. In 2010, the Health Effects Institute published a major review of the health impacts of living in close proximity to traffic pollution. They concluded that exposure to traffic pollution causes asthma attacks in children and may cause a wide range of other effects, including the onset or the start of childhood asthma, impaired lung function, cardiovascular impacts, premature death, and deaths due to cardiovascular disease. Most often, we know that these impacts fall on low-income residents and communities of color, and they are bearing the disproportionate burdens of near roadway pollution and these traffic health effects that the Health Effects Institute has studied. The Volkswagens commuting through and polluting through these communities is essentially piling on an already unacceptable health inequality and health burden. To date, this was mentioned earlier, several universities and media outlets have attempted to estimate the total excess emissions and resulting adverse health consequences of Volkswagen's actions, including premature deaths, lost work days due to respiratory illness, hospitalizations, bronchitis, and other outcomes caused by their excess pollution. With many caveats, again, it was mentioned earlier, due to data availability, these experts have concluded that deaths have been caused by this scandal, and more are projected to be caused by this deception as these cars stay on the road. This is an outrage, and these cars need to be off the road. We look forward to CARB and EPA providing more detailed inventories of the emissions that have been caused to provide the public and the enforcement processes a more definitive view of the damages that VW has caused, despite knowing these costs. So what do we do about all of this? That's the big question. The Lung Association has called for increased on-road, in-use monitoring that would detect accidental or deceptive excess emissions more immediately in the future. The amount of time that it took for this deception to go unnoticed and uncovered was too long and relied on the trust that VW was acting as an honest broker. Moving forward, ARB and EPA should both be given the tools needed to monitor in-use on-road fleet emissions and adequately enforce all violations. For example, the Air Resources Board is planning a new updated laboratory facility in Southern California. They've talked earlier today about increasing their more rigorous monitoring programs. These would be great steps to take to move us in the right direction to ensure that any future scandal like this is caught earlier. As far as mitigation goes, Volkswagen must be made to reduce the emissions of hazardous air pollutants, particularly NOx, on an air basin by air basin basis, back to compliance levels for all years that they were cheating on the emissions tests. Essentially, the dirtier air that VW caused should be cleaned up where our kids are breathing it today. We want new, real, enforceable, and verifiable emission reductions targeted to the communities most impacted by traffic pollution burdens. We view that as the truest solution. We do not feel that it would be at all appropriate for VW to be allowed to purchase offset credits from prior actions taken by other parties completely unrelated to this deception. We've called also for VW to secure additional reductions beyond what were required by the standards to make up for the impacts that they are responsible for and to deter future cheating. Once the full extent of the emissions is known through the work of the ARB and the EPA, the removal of several times the total amount of excess emissions caused by VW should be required. Finally, VW should be required to fund a substantial expansion of near roadway air quality monitoring infrastructure, both in California and beyond, and to basically to ensure that the remedies that are taken are really producing the results that they need to. VW should also fund independent research on the impact of motor vehicle emissions on public health. An update to the HEI study or others would be acceptable. To reiterate, the American Lung Association views the VW cheating as a direct assault on public health for profit. We recommend first and foremost that all of the cheating vehicles be taken off the road and either repaired or scrapped as quickly as possible. ARB and the EPA should be supported to do more on-road in-use monitoring as quickly as possible. The mitigation should occur on an air basis by air basis basin to address the communities that have been most impacted. And we'd like to see this significant expansion of the knowledge of the health impacts of traffic pollution and the network of air quality monitors to be conducted. With that, I'll thank you for the opportunity to express our disappointment in this whole thing and really look forward to ways that we can get these vehicles off the road as quickly as possible and protect the public health. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your candid observations. Ms. Rush, excuse me.
That's fine. Emily Rush, Executive Director of CalPERG. We have a long history of working to protect consumers in the marketplace, and we're shocked as anyone to learn that Volkswagen had intentionally misled air regulators and its customers, advertising their cars as clean diesel, when in fact these cars were emitting as much as 40 times the legal limit of smog-forming pollutants. So when we heard the news reports, our consumer team pulled together for a few days to figure out what we thought the appropriate response would be for these customers who bought these cars, and came to the conclusion that there is no other appropriate response than for VW to offer to buy these cars back at their full original purchase price from customers. And that's what we're calling on them to do. They cheated customers, selling them a product that was different than what was advertising. It's been clear that there's no easy fix to this problem. They should offer to buy the product back in full. We launched a campaign to do this, have over 20,000 petition signatures to VW to do that. And in fact, it's very, very personal for many of their customers, many of whom are our members, who really bought these cars because of the clean diesel promise. We have a couple of members actually from Colorado who are members of the PERG in Colorado, Elizabeth Kaspari and Marcus Munch, who saw our campaign in the news, contacted us, and actually decided they wanted to drive their 2011 Jetta Sportswagen TDI all the way from Colorado to the headquarters in Virginia to personally make a call on the company to offer to buy their car back, and delivered petitions from all of our members along the way. There's some really good blogs and pictures and things on our website about that trip. VW would not take back their car. They have not responded to our petitions, in particular a call for full buybacks. All they've offered is $1,000 in gift cards. This is insulting to consumers. If a company produces a product that's defective, they should offer to buy it back. If they lie about what's in their product, they should offer to buy it back. If they trick its customers into unwittingly polluting our air, they should have to pay for that. This has been more than 5 months since the scandal broke. Nothing is stopping them from already offering to buy these cars back, but they've chosen not to do so to date. So I want to applaud the California Air Resources Board for having this option on the table as they consider next steps. In addition to asking the company to buy these cars back, we have just a few other policy recommendations. So one, of course, is that the EPA and the Air Resources Board should demand maximum penalties from the company. Two, the auto industry lobbyists have won and defended a loophole in the law that make it harder to prosecute their executives for intentionally violating the law and putting the public at risk. So we've called on Congress to close that auto industry get out of jail free loophole. And then three, the Department of Justice, we want to make sure that there are no tax write-offs and any settlements associated with this wrongdoing. In so many recent settlements we've seen, including BP, a lot of the financial industry settlements, you see a big number in the news for what that company is going to have to pay, and then you read the fine print and realize that a bunch of that money is actually a tax deduction that the company gets to write off. That means it ends up falling on the shoulders of all of us if they're paying lower taxes as a result. So we want to make sure that that doesn't happen with this affair. And finally, that the Department of Transportation enforce strong federal fuel efficiency standards. That's it. Make them buy those cars back.
Thank you. Mr. Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairs. Really appreciate allowing us to be here today. Cliff Costa on behalf of the California New Car Dealers Association. Let me first start off by saying that California's VW dealers and all new car dealers were caught completely by surprise with the inclusion of a defect device in these diesel vehicles. VW, our Audi and Porsche dealers had no knowledge that VW was trying to subvert U.S. and California air emissions laws, and we were completely also one of the victims in this scandal. As reported by the New York Times, we are the other victim. We've talked about consumers here today. The new car dealers are also a victim of VW. Let me quote a former VW marketing executive, Steve Wilhelt, from this same New York Times article that was posted last year. And I quote, "The dealers are going to take a beating. People who were shopping for VW may now take those cars off their shopping list because they do not trust the company. It wasn't the fault of the dealers." This quote is playing out exactly as predicted. This scandal has impacted VW dealers tremendously, but it also affects every new car dealer who has a used VW on their lot. Sales at VW dealers have dropped substantially since the scandal broke last September. This was after VW dealers spent millions of dollars upgrading their facilities at the behest of VW because VW, had a U.S. sales goal to reach 800,000 vehicles every year by 2018. So California's new car dealers went out, spent the money to upgrade their facilities, and now are stuck with a bunch of cars on their lots that they can't sell and declining sales. This isn't just impacting just the diesel vehicles, which make up, before the scandal, about approximately 20% of VW sales in California, but they're also, our dealers are struggling to stay profitable. These vehicles that VW has issued is now also sort of implying that the non-diesel vehicles are now also tainted. The best way to sort of give that data is, let me quote the LA Times. We have seen a 30% drop in Jettas, a 40% drop in Beetles, and a 60% drop in Passats. Let me give you another number, a couple more numbers. In last February, so this past month, over last year's So we look from February, the month of February to the month of February. It's how we sort of compare. Ford increased their sales market by 20%. Honda by 13%, Fiat Chrysler by 12%, Nissan by 11%, Toyota by 4%. Meanwhile, VW new car dealers saw a drop of 13%. VW dealers are also seeing a hit to the valuation of their dealerships as a result of the scandal. Many in the news have quoted as saying, the actual valuations of the dealerships are dropping substantially. This is hitting substantially harder on those, what we call single-point VW dealers. This is the dealer who only owns a VW dealership, and that's the only dealership they own. There are many throughout the state of California, and now they are very concerned about their ability to keep their doors open and the ability to service their customers. Let me also note that of the over 450 lawsuits that have been filed as it relates to the scandal, far too many of them have included VW and non-VW dealers in their lawsuits against the manufacturer. While we had nothing to do with this scandal, we are still burdened with the continuing litigation. For the moment, VW is indemnifying their franchise dealers, but we continue to have concern about further exposure to litigation for any new car dealer who sold any diesel VW. Since, and I'll finish up with this, since to the public, VW's franchise dealers are also seen as VW the automaker, VW dealers are trying to manage the expectations of angry car owners, frustrated by the fact that they own these polluting diesel vehicles, and trying to provide any sort of answer we can to them. You've heard earlier today, there is no answer yet that we can provide to our customers. VW dealers are doing the best they can, and California's new car dealers stand ready to fix any potential fix to these cars when they do become available. With that, I want to thank you again for allowing us to participate.
Thank you very much. I'm struck by how the discussion is going. My colleague, the co-chair today, has highlighted the fact that these clean diesel vehicles are now worth less. Whatever they were worth the day before the scandal, they're worth less now. Ms. Rush has suggested that you pay full retail price of what you promised. Although some of these people have driven this car for 7 years, they may have caused air pollution and lung damage in somebody down the lane, but they were in the car driving and going. So I would imagine there's somewhere in the middle that a recall and compensation package can be put together. Mr. Costa, you raised the other victims here is the Volkswagen dealership, because, again, we're trying to look at behaviors, and before we get into the emissions and the calculations of what that is, just on the consumer side, and I don't know if we need any, new regulations or the agencies can do anything versus the global settlement with the Department of Justice and Cal EPA. My question was, I was originally wanted to ask about, do we need to take any actions regulatory? I think those address the emissions and maybe the penalty phase, but just on the consumer's side, I see some advantage of tying, new cars to the Volkswagen dealership. I know some consumers may be dissatisfied with that, is that we're going to recall this and you get so much credit for a new car that's, a gasoline or a hybrid or something like that with Volkswagen. I'm sure everybody will be unhappy with that, but you raise a good point about the dealerships and the taint that has occurred to them surely they didn't understand that this is a defect. So that's more of a statement versus a question. I don't like that. I usually like to ask questions. Senator Bell has a question.
Maybe the panelists, I know that ranging from the Lung Association, the Consumer Advocacy Group, CalPERG, and the dealers can comment on sort of their view of the scope of the economic impact of this and who is harmed and what lengthy processes would cause in terms of economic impact, in terms of like things like jobs, employment, other kinds of impacts. So, you know, I think dragging this out, not having them settle something would, I would assume the longer it takes, the worse it gets for economic impact in the state of California. So I'd like to hear what people have to say about that.
Well, Senator Bell, let me try to start with the dealer's perspective. We're seeing continued drops in sales. We obviously are having an impact in terms of our business valuations, but if we can't stay profitable to at least keep the doors open, some of our dealers, unfortunately, are going to have to close shop. That's each dealership employs an average of 85 employees, somewhere between 60 and 100 employees, depending on the size of the dealership and location. But that would mean all those people would be now without a job. The longer this stretches out, the more concern my members have as it relates to their impact of their bottom line. Understand this, Senator Bell, we are also consumers because we buy the vehicles directly from VW. So we now have a bunch of diesel vehicles that we have already purchased that are sitting on our lots and that we can't sell. Volkswagen is helping us with some of those costs, but our concern is long-term, what are the impacts to the people who work at the new car dealerships and the customers we then serve? Because it's not like VW has dealers throughout California, like the same sort of footprint that General Motors or Ford or Toyota has. There are a lot less VW dealers in comparison to other makes and models.
So I assume that as the sales go down, employees there'll be less of demand, and that would affect salesmen, other kinds of employee staff in the dealerships, correct?
Possibly. Speaking to several VW dealers before coming here today, they have said to me that they are doing everything they can to try to keep the doors open and keep continuing to employ the employees that they have because they want to make a commitment to their employees as well as to their customers.
Okay. Maybe some other people can comment.
Thank you.
Thank you all for sharing with us the impacts of the defeat devices. I have to open up this hearing for public comment now. Thank you. We will continue to push the Department of Justice and Cali PA and US EPA. So now let's ask for public comment. Anybody that would like to address the panel on the Volkswagen's defeat device and the implications for California, please.
Hello? Oh.
Yeah, your name and who you represent, or?
Yeah, Diana Vasquez with Sierra Club, California. Just want to make a brief comment and reiterate some of the comments that were made by American Lung Association and CalBERC, and really say, how do we actually move forward and create a plan? We heard a lot of testimony and different individuals being impacted, and given that there's litigation still happening, is really creating a plan for consumers right now, because these consumers are actually dealing with these vehicles, and they don't even know, like Senator Bell indicated, they're not even able to even sell them at market value. They have appreciated so much, and at this point, we don't even have a solution. A lot of them don't really know who to contact. And really starting in that sense, can we create a hotline or a consumer hotline? And that's really working with CARB and seeing how do we move forward in really fixing this problem, but also preventing any future outcomes. And from there, it's how do we actually fix it through statute, but also fixing it through regulation. So I really appreciate for having this update, and thank you for just giving us a sense of where we're at with this situation. So thank you.
All right, I'll close public comment now.
Well, I hope that we can resolve this as quickly as possible. It will take a very strong cooperation with Volkswagen. And I urge them to limit the economic impact and the damage to the California economy and the air quality that we have in California. I urge them to come and settle and resolve these issues as quickly as possible. The longer it takes, the more harm is caused to the people of California. Let's resolve this as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having this hearing.
Well, thank you. I'd like to thank all the speakers and the members of the Air Resource Board that was here. One thinks, why did Volkswagen feel they needed to do this? It wasn't Mercedes, it wasn't BMW. That pressure, I guess, that the executives feel that they wanted to do this. And I would like to think that we can create an environment here in California where car dealers want to produce the cleanest cars that get the greatest mileage, so that they can be put on a pedestal here and saying our consumers are going to do that. Take advantage of it. I'm dismayed, at the very least, at the actions of Volkswagen, but I'm encouraged by the hard work of the Air Resource Board in bringing this to the front page of the New York Times and all the other newspapers that have been reported of it. We're going to continue with this conversation, Senator Bell's committee and my committee, on how we can mitigate the damage. Again, we're not parties to these global settlements, but we hopefully provide an arena here so some of the people who are watching can think about the little elements and testimony that were made. I want to thank everybody who tuned in today and that attended our joint hearing. And with that, our meeting's adjourned.